Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel Royal K Snap. For today's showcase, we'll be breaking down the Professor Maw deck, its Pool 2 deck build, and the Pool 3 variations for the deck. Now for the Pool 2 deck build, right, we'll be taking it up against mid Pool 3, seeing how it works around Pool 3, how you can play the deck in Pool 3, and anything that could also come up messing up the entire play. Now just remember, this deck uses all Pool 2 cards, so if you're new in Pool 3 and you like this deck back at Pool 2, you can definitely walk around it and use it. In the meantime, now we'll also be going around the Pool 3 variation. There are different Pool 3 variations for the Professor Maw deck, which I've come up with, and if you have those cards for each variation, you can walk around those as well, assuming you are in mid, early, or late Pool 3. Now let's get straight into the deck breakdown for the Pool 2 variation in Pool 3. Now I've done quite a good write-up for the deck back at Pool 2, so I will leave the link of that in the description or in the comments. So for now, we have made two changes to the deck, which is Iceman and Storm are now in the deck. Now there are reasons for that, of course, because Storm gives us extra control, and also assuming we do not get Professor X, Storm is also there for the location lockdown. Then you also have Iceman. Iceman is just a high valued 1-cost card. Really, it's not a must he's there, but I just wanted him to be in the deck. So as usual, the best case scenario goes Sunspot on 1, on turn 2 you use Scorpion, on turn 3 you use Ebony plus Armor. Now your turn 1 to turn 3 is always depending on what you have in your hand. Sometimes I go Sunspot on 1, then my turn 2 goes Iceman Ebony, or my turn 2 goes Ebony alone. So it's just Sunspot and Ebony in one location. Just depends on what you have in your hand, right? And in the showcase part of the video, you see the numerous number of plays where it's not always the perfect starting hand between turn 1 to turn 3, but things still work around the deck basically. Then usually if you cannot play Ebony or Armor at turn 3, I like going with Storm turn 3, then Jessica Jones turn 4, or in some cases I use Punisher instead of Jessica Jones at turn 4. Then my turn 5 is always usually Professor X. Now there's a reason for why I like the Storm plus Professor X play, which is the turn 3 to turn 5 play. Now on your turn 3, since you play Storm, your opponent knows you played Storm at turn 3, he or she tries to play back at your Storm's flooding location at turn 4, but you've dropped the Jessica Jones, right? Now since they are playing at turn 4, since they're playing at Storm's location at turn 4, they leave the other 2 locations abandoned. So it just feels like a waste of a turn since they do that. I mean, not everyone does that, but some people do that, right? And since they've left the other 2 locations free, so you can then determine which location you can use Professor X at. I always use Professor X at a location that gives me an edge to play Claw. Like for example, I would only use Professor X in the middle or at the right lane to always make sure that I'm able to use Claw, because Claw's ability is it grants 6 power to the location to his right. So you have to know where you place Professor X or Storm. Depends. You have to know where you place Professor X or Storm. So just try and make sure Claw is able to give the +6 power to whichever location you want. Then you also have Mr. Fantastic as well, who is great for a turn 6 play, assuming you do not have Claw. right? To try and just give the extra 2 power to each location instead. Then you have Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is a great 26 killer, depending on how the run goes over time, right? You might have the worst possible run. You're winning on one location, you're losing another location, and Shang-Chi is what changes the entire game across the board and gives you that 26 win. In some cases, that has totally happened to me, and Shang-Chi has granted me my win. So I guess that's all I have to say for the Pool 2 deck breakdown. I'll leave a link in the description to the full breakdown. So let's go straight into the Pool 3 breakdown. Just a quick note, we are just breaking down, talking about the Pool 3 variations, but we are not showcasing them. This video is only focusing on the Pool 2 deck against the current Pool 3 meta and how it works. So let's get straight into the breakdown. Now, usually this deck is really nice, but I'd like to say if you do not have some of these cards, there could be a kind of mix up in the way it will work. But obviously there are other alternatives to use instead of some of these cards here. So I like to call this variation the Viper Professor Maw variation. This variation takes advantage of Viper throwing in Ebony Maw to the opponent's location, allowing you to be able to lock down that location because they cannot play cards at the location anymore. So my turn 1, I'd usually advise not playing Sunspot turn 1. You play Hood at turn 1, at least the best case scenario, Hood turn 1, so you have that 1 power, that 8 power demon in your hand. Then your turn 2, Daredevil or Armor, depending on what you want to play around with, but your turn 2 usually is Daredevil. Then your turn 3. Now your turn 3 is where the entire spice comes from. In some cases, you do not have this specific combination of cards at turn 3, but when you do, it works like magic, right? Your turn 3 goes Ebony, then Viper, not Viper, then Ebony. It has to go Ebony, then Viper, and it has to be in an empty location. I prefer it to be in an empty location, just not to mess up Viper taking in another card to your opponent's location, right? To your opponent's side of the location. So Ebony, then Viper. Viper throws in Ebony as explained. Ebony will help lock down that side of the location so the opponent can play cards there. But just remember, Ebony is a 1-cost card, meaning it's susceptible to Killmonger. Killmonger can easily destroy Ebony, and that's where your turn 4 play comes true. Your turn 4 play, right? Depending on if this is what you want to do, you play Armor at that spot. But you also have a different turn 4 play depending on if you have these cards in your hand. If you have these cards in your hand, Spider-Man, then Professor X, your turn 4 play, right, would lead to you gambling that your opponent does not have Killmonger. Obviously, by the deck the person is playing at turn 3, you definitely, from turn 2 to turn 3, you would know, you can kind of guess if they have Killmonger in their hand. Like for example, if you have a feeling that your opponent is playing a Suffer deck, you should most likely be expecting a Killmonger. If you have a feeling your opponent is playing a Destroy deck, obviously when you see Bucky, Nova and the likes, you know he's playing a Destroy deck, and he most likely has Killmonger in his deck or in his hand somewhere. So from there you can decide on what you want to do at turn 4. So you have the Armor play at turn 4, then you also have the Spider-Man play at turn 4 in a different location, right? So you can then use Professor X in that location at turn 5. So meaning you have already locked up 2 different locations. Now this is where some opponents will retreat, right, depending on what deck they are playing. Then you also have decks like Wong, which We'll obviously jump into Ebony's location depending on if they are using a Wong plus White Tiger deck. So you have to keep that in mind as well. So basically that's how it works. Then your turn 6 play, that's when you drop in Demon and Claw. Claw will just help you grant as much power as you want to whichever location, whichever locked up location is needing that. So that's what Claw is there for. Then you also have Drax. The Drax play, Drax just extra power. You know, since you've locked up that location, since there's only one location that is free, the opponent is, if your opponent is still playing, is going to play at that location. So Drax from a 4/5 goes into a 4/8. So that's one power of the deck. Then you also have the Storm plus Juggernaut play if you want to do that at turn 3. That's Storm at turn 3, then Juggernaut at turn 4 to try and really make sure you secure Storm's location. Juggernaut plus Storm is one of the best plays and one of the plays I like using, especially in my Sofa deck. So that's about it. Now we also have some other variations of the deck as well, which is the Professor Maw Luke Cage variation, which takes advantage of Luke Cage and Hazmat. Then with Typhoid Mary for the huge 10 power as well. Now Luke Cage replaces Viper, Hazmat replaces Daredevil, and Typhoid Mary replaces Drax or Spider-Man, whichever one you want. Now it's as simple as ABC. Since there is no Viper, we can then play Storm at turn 3, Storm turn 3, Juggernaut or Typhoid Mary at turn 4, depending on what you have in your hand, either Juggernaut or Typhoid Mary at turn 4. Then at turn 5, go straight with Professor X, or you might not use Professor X depending on how you want to play your turn 6, or what your opponent is playing around with, or the locations across the board. Everything is all determined, is all a probability basically. Then your turn 6, remember this is just best case scenario. Your turn 6 is Luke Cage plus Hazmat. You try and reduce your enemy's power across the board while keeping your own power the same. Also, I forgot to note this in the previous variation, which is the Viper variation of the deck. Spider-Man can be replaced by Rescue, right? And Drax can be replaced by Thor or Mojo. Now, I don't like Thor for a reason. I like Thor and I don't like Thor for a reason. Thor can also replace Juggernaut. Don't let me forget about that. Now, Thor with adding Mjolnir into your deck just fills up your deck, and it could not, and in some cases, it makes you not get a specific card that could potentially win you the game. So you do it at your own risk, I guess, depending on whatever you have. So we also have the Rescue play. Now the Rescue play is more consistent than the Spider-Man play. At least I like it more than the Spider-Man play and over the Drax play. You can say, why would you like Rescue play over Spider-Man? Now Rescue play at turn 4, that turns into a 4/9 at turn 5. So you play Professor X on Rescue's location at turn 5. So that's a 4/9. That's a 9 plus Professor X's 3. That's a 12. Now your opponent might want to have even dropped a Shang-Chi because Rescue turns into a 4/9. So since Professor X locks up that location, cards cannot be destroyed in his location. There's no point. Literally. So he just wastes his Shang-Chi on Professor X's location. Now Professor X as well is also a good counter to Lockjaw locations. Once X is added to Lockjaw locations, no matter the number of cards they add in Lockjaw's location, they will not switch with whatever the opponent has in the deck. So yes, that's all I have for the Pool 3 variations. I'm missing a few of these Pool 3 cards, so once I have all of them, I will definitely showcase all the different variations. So thank you, and let's get straight into the Pool 2 versus Pool 3 breakdown. Showcase, I mean. Thank you.
Wind, aid my hand.
systems go.
Wind, aid my hand.
Opponent snapped. Enough said, Bob. Victory!
Wind, aid my hand.
systems go.